Hey, friendship men. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm actually recording this on Sunday afternoon. It's about 2:20. It literally just got through storming, hailing, and wind blowing. Excuse me. And so I've actually had this prepared a day or so, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to go ahead and share this week's devotion with you. And I'll probably post this about Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday, but I just wanted to go ahead and record it. It is still thundering a little bit, so if you hear that in the background, you'll know kind of what day I did this. But I'm coming to you today with the next round lesson from our lessons from the supporting role that we've been doing, and we're really learning about some important men in the Bible and just the roles that they play, even though they may not be in the forefront, even though they may not be the center men in the story. They still have important lessons. We can learn important lessons from their life and what they've endured and what they've been able to do as men in this life. And so this week, we're going to talk about three men, actually. They're not unfamiliar to us, and they play a supporting role to one of the leading men in the Bible, and that's Daniel. They play their own leading roles a little bit later on, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to share with you lessons that we can learn from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I'm going to take you to Daniel chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. And it says, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were four of the young men chosen from all of the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach. Mishael was called Meshach. And Azariah was called Abednego. So can you imagine being taken as men from their homes, everything that they knew, and being thrust in a new culture, to learn a new language, to just learn everything that they can. They were being asked to give up everything they believed in, asked to give up everything that they identified with, to assimilate basically into this new culture. And Daniel and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, knew exactly how that felt, even to the point that the Babylonians renamed them. They took their identity as Hebrew men and gave them Babylonian names. And so they're struggling as men to hang on to who they were, to their core belief as men. And so with so much of the time in Daniel, we focus on Daniel and the story of the lion's den and all of his dreams and visions and things that go along with that. There are some important things that we can learn from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and their life. And so we're going to talk through this a little bit, and hopefully you'll be blessed because of it. So the first thing that we need to understand, that the first thing that we can learn from these three in particular, and it's very important in a day and age in which we live, is that there is, regardless of the culture around us, there is still a standard that we must adhere to and stick to. You know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were taken from their homes, and they were placed in the kingdom of Babylon. And needless to say, those two cultures were very different, but Daniel and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, understood the importance of adhering to the law and staying true to the Word of God. And so, whenever it came time for Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to compromise their beliefs by eating from the king's table, eating the king's food, becoming prepared as king's servants, Daniel and the three Hebrew children asked permission to be able to stick to their diets, stick to their belief system, and they were allowed to do that. And because of that, God blessed them. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But guys, we are bombarded with messages and pressures to compromise our belief systems and the very foundation of our Christian walk. Bible speaks of a time where what was right is considered wrong, and that's kind of where we're at right now. If we have a certain belief system where we believe certain things are wrong, then we're considered wrong because we believe they're wrong. And so we're living in this world, in this system, to where we are being challenged to compromise and to surrender our belief system. But what we have to understand from the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that we must stand firm in our beliefs, in our walk with God, in the midst of all these cultural pressures and world belief systems that are pushing against us. And so that's the first thing, is we need to hold fast to our profession of faith. Secondly, we need to understand that God rewards faithfulness. God rewards faithfulness, but it's not for our own blessing, but it's for the furtherance of his kingdom. So in Daniel 1:17 it says, God gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom, and God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. So as a result of their obedience in living a godly, holy life, God promoted them and gave them supernatural abilities. These abilities would be used to demonstrate God's power on the earth. And men, as we hold fast to our faith, God is going to bless us. He is going to give us supernatural ability to be able to do things that we normally wouldn't be able to do on our own. And in the process, bring glory and honor to him. The Bible says, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men to me. He's talking about him, and so I'm talking about him. So God uses us when we're faithful to him. He blesses us, gives us favor, again, not for just ourselves, but for the furtherance of our kingdom. So we need to understand, or furtherance of his kingdom, and we need to understand that part. The third thing that we can learn from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that to remain faithful even when the leader is gone. So in Daniel chapter 3 now, we're switching gears, and this is the story we're probably most familiar with, where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are concerned. King Nebuchadnezzar's built this giant statue of himself, it's this giant image, and he's telling everyone to bow down. And so Daniel apparently has gone away doing the king's business because he's not there, or at least the Bible doesn't talk about him being there. And so here are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced with an opportunity, faced with a challenge to their belief and their service of God. And so here Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are refusing to bow. And in the absence of their group's leader, Daniel, in the absence of their leader, these 3 men continue to stand and do the right thing. I know many of you have heard the saying that when the boss is away, the mice will what? Play. We hear that a lot. And guys, I'm just going to tell you, it shouldn't be like that. We need to give our best at all times. God didn't give us ability. God didn't give us favor. God didn't place us in the roles and the positions that he's placed us in to goof off and play around. We need to give our best all the time, not just when the boss is in the room. We need to work just as hard when he's not in the room. The same is with our walk with God. We don't need to just be on our best behavior living a godly life in church, or when the pastor's present, or if we wouldn't do it with Jesus standing next to us. If we wouldn't do it, then we shouldn't be doing it probably. But you have to understand he's always present. So, guys, the other thing that we can learn right there is that regardless of who's present with us, we always need to be giving our best. There's an old saying that says that you can know about the true character of a person by watching what they do when no one's present. And so that's something to keep in mind as we live our daily life, knowing that whether we think it or not, God's always watching. And that's not a threat. That's not a fear tactic by any means. It's just letting us know that we're always living this life in front of Him, and we need to remain faithful to Him. And then finally, leave the outcome in God's hands. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in Daniel chapter 3, verse 16 through 18, it says, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if He doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. You know, guys, we face so many situations where we don't really know what the outcome is. You know, the situations right now with COVID. You know, businesses are closed and we're all quarantined, although thankfully we're kind of, you know, that we're opening some things back up here in Arkansas. But we don't know how things are going to turn out. We don't know what things are going to look like a month from now and 6 months from now and a year from now. And many of you may have be going through situations where I don't know what my future, you don't know what your future looks like. I remember feeling that when I was going through my divorce, not knowing what my future was going to look like. And so we have to understand that the outcome, if we're remaining faithful to Him, the outcome is in God's hands. You know, the Bible says in Jeremiah 29:11, God's saying, I know the plans I have for you. They're plans for the good and not for evil, to prosper you, to give you a future and a hope. And so God has these plans set out before us, and we don't always know what they are, and that's hard. But the three Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, knew that that God had their futures in His hand. And I love it when they said, but even if He doesn't, we want to make it clear that it's not going to change how we serve you and how we serve God and how we love Him. You know, it was so funny. I was looking back on my mantle. Hopefully this is showing up right. It's backwards to me right now, but hopefully when it shows on the video, that's correct. It says, and if not, He is still God, or He is still good. And somebody gave this to me back a couple of Christmases ago, probably right in the middle of probably the most difficult time in my life. And I remember seeing this and kind of being upset with it because not upset at the gift, but upset at what it said, because sometimes we have in our minds that we have a certain outcome we want God to do. But God has plans, and He has the outcome in His hands, and He has us in His hands, and know that we can trust Him with the outcome. I know, looking back for me, about a year post divorce, and just knowing God is in control. God has healed a lot of things in my life. God has revealed a lot of things to me about myself, and helping me grow and helping me improve me. And so I know that I don't know what my future is going to be, but I do know that God has it in His hands, and I trust Him for it. The good, the bad. I don't know if you had asked me a year ago that this is what I would be like now. I wouldn't have seen it a year ago, but because God has done so much in me in this process, I can trust Him now going forward, knowing that regardless of what the outcome is, God has me in His hands. And the same thing with you. Regardless of the outcome, God has you in His hands, and you can trust Him and to know that God can deliver you. And even if He doesn't, we can still trust Him, and He has our best interests in mind. And so, guys, I just want to encourage you this week to, number one, take that stand for God. Regardless of what is around you, take the true stand of what is right in God's eyes. Secondly, know that God rewards faithfulness. And it's not just to reward you personally, but for you to use that reward to bless others and to further the kingdom. And third is to remain faithful even whenever the leader's gone, when your boss isn't present, when you're not around the pastor, when you're not around your family, when the lights are off in your bedroom and you're by yourself and you got your phone. that you make the right choices, and you do the right things, and you know that God is ever present, and you can call Him anytime to help you. And then 4, leave the outcome in God's hands. Know that He has your best interest at heart, and if you will just trust Him, God will never lead you astray, and He'll never lead you wrong. Let's pray. God, I love you today. Lord, I thank you so much for the legacy that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego left to us through your word. God, I thank you that we can trust you, God, with everything. Lord, I thank you that we can trust you with our futures. You know our outcomes. You know what's there for us in the future, God, and I pray that you would just encourage us today, God, to let go of our fear and worry about what may to come, Father, but that we can trust and hope in you, God. And we just give you glory and praise for it in your name. Amen. Well, guys, hopefully by the time you actually see this, we're going to have some answers about church and services. I know the governor is supposed to speak. Again, I'm taping this on Sunday. The governor is supposed to give us some information on Monday. So hopefully that's going to make things a little clearer for us. And hopefully you'll be hearing from us again about things that are going on. But anyway, hope you have a great week, a great rest of your week. And I love you guys. If you need me, call, text. Don't hesitate to do that. And we'll be talking to you hopefully in person soon.